Welcome to Aid for President, your rundown of what's happening here in Washington, D.C., relating to the stimulus funding, the money for unemployment checks, and other efforts to keep the economy going strong during this global pandemic. I'm Talib Kareem, CEO of Abe Legal. Abe Legal is a platform that provides appointments for lawyers 24 hours a day, safely from the comfort of your home. If you're a family and has a loved one who's just recently passed away and need to get access to their funds or bank accounts or houses that they might own, or if you're a small business owner struggling to keep your doors open and you want to apply for grants or loans, then contact Abe Legal and set up an appointment with one of our lawyers and our counsels who are there to help you to survive this pandemic. You can book that appointment at abe.legal. So we are here to talk about four things. One, what is the skinny bill that was just passed by the United States Senate that, as you know, is controlled by Senate Republicans, something that I am calling not a skinny bill, but a crazy bill. Second of all, how many people exactly have received the $300 unemployment benefits that were promised by the White House through the ordered redistribution of the funds that were in the FEMA disaster fund pot? And next, I'm going to talk about what are the key takeaways relating to this conversation about the stimulus and the unemployment benefits that are not being talked about right now during the Democratic convention, which is the reason why people like myself have boycotted it. And then lastly, what you can do about this mess here in Washington, D.C. So first of all, what is this thing that they're calling the skinny bill that was just passed by Republicans, something that I call the crazy bill? So I'm not going to call it skinny bill anymore. I'm just called the crazy bill, right? So first of all, the Senate Republicans passed their own stimulus bill, and it was much, much, much less than the $3 trillion plus that were approved by the House of Representatives that is controlled, as you know, by Democrats. So what does it have in it? First of all, instead of having $600 a month, $600 a week for unemployment benefits for the 34 million Americans that are unemployed, it only has $300. So half of the money that was being given to those unemployed Americans. And those are people who are not just people who have 9-to-5 jobs, but even people who are small business owners, which, again, I don't know if you know, you look around you, but small business owners across the country are going out of business, except the big box companies or big box retailers, for example. They're, like Walmart and the like, they're doing gangbusters, but the mom and pop small businesses in our neighborhoods across this country are going out of business. Even businesses that are in shopping malls are shuttering. I was seeing one shopping mall in Michigan where I grew up that is being overgrown with weeds now because nobody is going there. So again, this is the tragedy that's happening. And again, these unemployment benefits were going to help these small business owners whose, again, livelihood has just totally been decimated, and that they were receiving some of this money to keep their families afloat while they figured out what their next plan was. But again, the Republicans that control the United States Senate want to slash that money that was being received to them from $600 a week to $300 a week. So again, it goes from, again, having a job where you're again, $600 a week is the same as a person who's making $15 an hour. So they want to take $15 an hour at 40 hours a week. So they want to basically take somebody down from making $15 an hour for 40 hours a week down to, again, money that would be the same as getting, again, half of that, which is $7.50. an hour. And again, if anybody knows the cost of living, even in the least expensive state in this country, you have to not be making $15 an hour to survive and pay for your annual expenses, not just $30 an hour to survive and pay for your annual expenses, but you need to be making about $45 an hour in order to basically be able to pay for your basic expenses in the state of Mississippi. So again, this is the challenge that the not skinny bill but crazy bill offers to the American public. Another thing is that there's a big chance that, in fact, people who are self-employed won't even be eligible to receive that money at all. So you're talking about a good 5 to 6 million Americans that are going to be cut out, according to the Republicans' bill. And in addition, there would be about $105 billion for schools. The monies in the so-called stimulus bill that is offered by Republicans won't last until the end of the pandemic, but only until the end of the year. As we all know, this pandemic is again brought about closures of businesses that are not expected to reopen, some ever, definitely not magically at the end of the year. So again, that makes no sense either. In addition, there is some, and note, the new president, whoever that president is, won't be actually sworn in until sometime in January. So again, the idea of the January or February, actually, I need to verify that. So the idea of the bill, no, I think it's January, my mistake. The idea that a bill would only extend unemployment benefits for the end of the year as something that is good for the American people makes no sense, and that's the reason why I call it a crazy bill. Next, the bill does not include actually stimulus checks, which is that one-time $1,200 a month per person with additional monies for children. So that money is not in that bill. And why is that? Is because they wanted to keep it under $500 billion, as opposed to the $3 trillion that not only the Democrats thought was needed, but also the Federal Reserve leaders who are economic experts that we appoint to these positions were advising. So again, this is the craziness of this legislation that was just passed by the United States Senate. And that's the reason I call it a crazy bill. Next, how many people have received the $300 that was ordered to be paid by the executive orders that the president signed about 2 weeks ago? As you may remember, when the unemployment benefits ran out, there was some negotiation to see if they could get them restarted. Because the negotiations were stalled, the president signed an executive order that would restore, he said, $400 a week, but in fact it was $300 a week, because the federal government was only paying $300 a week and directing the state governments to pay $100 a week. And so again, many of the state governments were balking for, again, these unfunded mandates. And so therefore the White House backed down from the requirement that $100 be paid. And so therefore there was only $300 extra that were being offered. And again, we talked extensively in the last podcast about how, again, millions of Americans were being cut out. So the Republicans passed a bill from the Senate that would keep that cap on $300 a month going. But to date, according to the most recent reporting, there's only been about less than out of the 34 million Americans who, again, were impacted. They said that only about 250,000 people have received the extra money in their bank accounts. And those people were all in the state of Arizona, because they were the one out of the 8 states who had been approved for that money. And in order to receive the money from that was promised under the executive order, you had to apply for that money from FEMA, and they had to grant you your permission and I believe some type of waiver. So this is the state, and so there are other states that are going to be in the list of others that can expect to receive the money sooner than later. And I can rattle them off to see if any of your states are going to be on that list. That is Colorado, Missouri, Utah, Iowa, Louisiana, and New Mexico. So those are the states that, again, are already in the process of getting that money out to their people. And if you are in a state that's not on that list, I would encourage you to contact your state elected officials, particularly your legislatures, and make sure that they push to get the monies that the people in your state need, at least in the short term. Because I really believe that this executive order was only designed to get the House and Senate leaders back together to negotiate a better deal to renew the full $600 unemployment benefits, but that has not been done. So again, the next question is, so what can you take away from the Democratic Convention that may relate to this discussion? Well, quite frankly, I called for a boycott of the convention. So therefore, I don't know exactly what was said throughout the entire past 3 days. However, I have gleaned from news reports, and according to the news reports, some of the highlights that I did not miss were some pretty bad speeches by Republicans, such as Susan Molinari, a former Republican congresswoman who left the Congress to become an anchor woman. Her husband, by the way, was also a fellow New York congressman as well. And she turned from being an anchor woman in CBS, I believe, then to becoming an executive with Google, representing them in Washington, D.C. And now she's a lobbyist. So her endorsing Joe Biden is not going to hurt her bottom line at all, because a lot of lobbyists are also endorsing Joe Biden. Also, there was Senator Bernie Sanders, who gave unfortunately, not much of a motivating or inspiring speech at all. In fact, it was largely called actually demotivating to a lot of the millions of young and other progressive-minded people in this country who supported him. But his speech was followed up by a 60-second speech the next day from Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, AOC, and again, a lot of people were disappointed that she didn't get more than 60 seconds. But again, you kind of see what the kind of ideas are in the Democratic Party. Then you had a speech of former First Lady Michelle Obama and also former President Clinton, who has been made more famous through the scandals and revelations that have come out in the Netflix documentary on Jonathan Epstein, the so-called child predator. Again, I don't speak bad of the dead, so I won't say much more about Mr. Epstein, but I will say that it was not necessarily a good look for President Clinton, who I actually did support and work for as a young Democratic aide and activist back many years ago. Nevertheless, and then two other notable people who spoke were a Broadway star, Billy Porter, who was dressed as what appeared to be in women's clothing, singing a rendition of the 60s hit song "For What It's Worth." And again, for what it's worth, millions of Americans are again out of job and are needing their unemployment benefits. But unfortunately, nobody was bringing attention to the fact that you had Democrats who were partying, if you will, in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, while Americans were not tuned into the Democratic convention, but were tuned into the challenges just to survive and keep from being evicted, because the eviction moratorium has also expired, and the moratorium for disconnection of your utilities has also expired. So these are some of the challenges, and then there was, of course, the nomination speech of Joe Biden by an African American woman who supposedly met Biden while working in an elevator in New York, and sadly, like her colleague mentioned before, the other African American, she was dressed in men's clothing. So you had a man dressing in women's clothing, African American, and a African American woman dressing in men's clothing. I think it sends a really strange message, to say the very least, and I'm concerned about that. And so that's what you have at the Democratic Convention. Something that I, again, as someone who was a former Democratic operative, had gone to every Democratic Convention since 1996, boycotted because of the fact that we have not had a renewal of the stimulus monies or the unemployment benefits or the money for hazard pay and other types of relief that is needed by the American people who hired members of Congress, both Democrats and Republicans. So I'm calling for a boycott of both the Democratic and Republican convention. And guess what? It appears to be working, because the House of Representatives is going to be coming back supposedly on Saturday before the Republican convention to vote on a stimulus package. And my understanding is that a number of House Democrats have called on the leadership of the House to also pass their version of a skinny bill that can somehow be negotiated together with the Republican skinny bill. But this is where, again, the additional pressure has to come in. Now the pressure has to be applied. You have to continue the boycotting of the Democratic Convention. You have to continue boycotting of the other platform, which I mentioned was Amazon, again, and you have to continue boycotting Whole Foods. You got to continue the boycotting, and you got to make it public, because if there's a negotiation and the $600 unemployment benefits is pared back to $300, then what's going to happen? And how that's going to benefit even people who have jobs? Well, first of all, what that means is that those $600 checks weekly were funding 5 million jobs. And so people who actually are working, on businesses who were depending upon these people, like Abe Legal, again, I could tell you firsthand that the number of people who needed lawyers probably didn't go down, but the number of people who could afford to actually book their legal consultations through Abe Legal did go down. And if you are somebody who doubts that, then click comment below, or push like and subscribe. But nevertheless, that is the case. So what I'm calling upon you to do is continue your boycotts. It is working, and you can believe that the people, if they continue to see folks, holding back their money and blacking out the Democratic Convention, they're going to do something to make sure that they get you guys back on board, because they fear that if they don't, then you all won't vote for them, which you should not vote for them if they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing. So that is the end of the Abe Legal Podcast. If you are a family and you are you've just suffered a loss, and you need help with trying to figure out how you get access to your loved ones' assets. If you don't have a will and you have some property, you want to make sure that if you and when you die, that those assets and that property, that money goes to the right family member, and that perhaps your children are taken care of. If you are a small business owner and you are struggling to keep your doors open, and you want to apply for some of the grants and or loans, or modify your term of your debt, and you need help from a lawyer, discreetly, safely, from the privacy of either your home and or your office, then contact Abe Legal. We are here day and night. Again, hit the like, subscribe, and feel free to put any questions that you have into the comments, and you can expect us to get back with you in a very short time. This has been Talib Kareem, CEO of Abe Legal, and we look forward to coming back to you soon.